Electronics consumption is accelerating for new and second-hand products, helping to bridge the digital divide. However, eventually all electrical and electronic products will become e-waste. Due to rapid advances in technology, there is a much wider range of products available and new versions of existing goods are being launched constantly. Therefore, the rate at which electronics are being discarded and sheer volume of waste has increased drastically as well. This electronic waste or e-waste is being exported to developing countries where crude recycling techniques expose both the workers and the environment to dangerous chemicals.
Up to now, the biggest problem or the biggest challenges that we've had in Nigeria is lack of awareness. Even the term e-waste is not well recognized in Nigeria. Unfortunately, e-waste still today contains hazardous materials that can have a negative impact on both the environment but also on humans. Cathode ray tubes contain arsenic, and currently what's happening is some of these scrap dealers are actually destroying these CRTs and in effect getting poisoning from the arsenic. In very small doses is causing dermatitis, but in large doses arsenic actually causes death. Aside from that, there's obviously a global impact. Some of the gases that have been released from these electronics, particularly when they're being burnt, which is very common currently in Nigeria, a lot of this e-waste gets incinerated at the end of a life. These gases that have been let off into the environment are causing a global problem, which needs to be tackled now.
And another part of the danger right there now is that some of these electronic boards, they now get into the hands of these perverse people who use them for dangerous things. We talk about how do these people make all these bombs and the rest of them. Where do they get the boards from? Electronic waste. What you call waste right now, they're now recovering those electronic waste, and you have this perverse genius using them to cause all this havoc that we have all over. So government needs to look into this area critically now. It's an emerging issue, and it's rising, and it's a threat to the nation's security and the environment and the health of the people. So it's a major issue, and it requires a knowledge-based approach.
So how much e-waste is actually out there? Globally, e-waste generation is growing by 40 million tons per year. This is equivalent to filling around 15,000 football fields 6 feet deep with waste. Statistics show that 353 million computers, 248 million TV sets, 1.59 million mobile phones were sold in 2011, while 41.5 million tons of e-waste was generated globally the same year. In 2010, 50 to 85% of e-waste generated in Africa has been generated domestically, equating to 650,000 to 1 million tons of e-waste per annum. It is foreseen that by 2030, developing countries will be discarding between 400 and 700 million of obsolete personal computers per year, compared to around 300 million in developed countries. Now the question is, how big of a problem is the e-waste situation? The worldwide figure from the United Nations Environment Programme guesstimates that approximately 20 million to 50 million metric tons of e-waste are generated annually, accounting for 5% of all municipal solid waste. Due to increased safety rules in Western countries, it is 10 times cheaper to export e-waste to developing countries than it is to locally recycle. Though some e-waste exportation is legal, a large portion is illegal. Electronics exported under the category of used or second-hand goods are not subject to any restrictions, and numerous other loopholes, export schemes, and corrupt officials have been discovered. And when you focus on the truth, some of the products end up here in Nigeria. At the Computer Village in Lagos, Nigeria, the chairman of the importers of refurbished computers at the Computer Village laid the blame at the doorstep of the agencies in charge of border control.
We don't have any control about some fraudulent importers that go out there and want to make money. It is the duty of government agencies to ensure that they don't come in. But when these things come into the system, it's difficult to trace where it's coming from. But we all know that you cannot go to America and manufacture substandard. This can be traced back to Asia, to China in particular. So I think it's a problem of enforcement. It's not like there's a deliberate effort on our own part to ensure this short-change the system, because a businessman wants to make profit, but we are telling them that you don't make profit at the expense of your own health and your national security. What we are telling them is that when you go to buy the ones that are still reusable. Don't bring the ones that reach the end life. And we have been engaging them, and it has been working. NESRA commended us because over time we have drastically reduced the level of unusable, unserviceable electronic equipment coming into the country.
The National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, a parastatal of the Federal Ministry of Environment, has the responsibility for the protection and development of the environment, biodiversity conservation and sustainable development of Nigeria's natural resources in general, and environmental technology, including coordination and liaison with relevant stakeholders within and outside Nigeria on matters of enforcement of environmental standards, regulations, rules, laws, policies and guidelines.
Environmental pollution control.
Its Director General says the agency is ready to go after those who flout the law.
We're also very mindful of non-branded products, and this is why we are working closely with the customs to make sure that any product coming into Nigeria, the importer must be registered. He has a role to play. He has a role to play in bringing in that. And in addition to, even what we call the charity donors, it's a big problem. Some may bring, already, the product is already what we call near end of life. So a charity organization bringing used equipment, they must ascertain that it's appropriately functional, that it has some life in it. There's no point using Nigeria as a dumping ground. And for those Nigerians, unfortunately, who will go to overseas and just bring to Nigeria, end of lives, where they go to some garage, dump houses and all that, they just fill containers and bring. The time is over. We've banned that. It's part of the regulation. You don't need to bring it in. About 6 ships been repatriated back to their country of origin, while ascertain they are bringing into Nigeria the e-waste. And now I'm happy to tell you now that it's working very well. Before any such importation is coming, we have an alert. Listen, we are not sure either this shipment is passing through West Africa. Be alert. At NESRA, we have this dump watch program where all the key agencies and enforcement agencies, including the Army, the Navy, the Department of Military Intelligence, and the Custom, we'll set that alert system, we'll have a meeting, and then we'll monitor that. And that's how we've been able to get back to their country of origin.
It is an undeniable fact that e-waste in an unethical recycling operations poses a major threat to both human health and the environment. Valuable metals such as gold and copper can be extracted from electronics, but this recovery process is often done in the cheapest and most unsafe way.
The EPR, extended producer's responsibility, it was one of the new provisions in the NESRA law. But you see, these things have not been properly coordinated. We have been advocating that there's a need to have recycling plants down here. It makes it possible for us to gather what we have together and channel it to the recycling plants. So what we have here are scavengers that bring these things, cannibalize them for whatever they can get from them, and this has messed up the process. And that is where you begin to find these things finding its way to our water stream and polluting the environment because they are untrained and they don't have the capacity. So that is where we are calling on government to bring the enablement so that we can partner with them. Whatever is not reusable, we can channel it to the recycling plant and then we make money. It's going to create employment for our teeming population. But the way they're doing it now is haphazard and there is no coordinated effort at harmonizing all these things. And that's where the main problem lies.
Despite the obviously toxic nature of the most common recycling techniques, over 90% of e-waste landfills or dumps have no environmental standards. The environmental impact of unregulated recycling sites are evident in polluted groundwater, extremely unsafe levels of lead and mercury in nearby rivers, and toxic emissions that contribute to global warming.